Hi, Business Math. Today we're doing lesson 4.2, practice credit card finance charges. You're not going to do all of these. I'm going to assign numbers 1, all problems on number 1 in the chart, numbers 2, 3, 5, and 6. Okay, so those are the problems you're doing in 4.2 practice. Okay, so what you could do is you could try these and then check your work with the video, or hit pause throughout and see if you're doing the work correctly. So let's look at number 1. It says complete the table below. They give you different values here. These are your balances subject to the finance charges. These are the APRs given, the periods. You have to calculate the periodic rate. Here's the number of periods for each problem, and then you're going to calculate the finance charge. So let's look at number 1A. We have $213.57. The annual percentage rate is 15%, monthly for 1 month. So we need to find our periodic rate by taking 15% and dividing it by 12. So I'm going to show that here. When I do that in my calculator, remember this is a percent that I'm dividing by 12. Okay, so I get 1.25%. Then I'm going to divide that again to get our decimal. This is different than what Mrs. Heidish did in the video. She left them as percentages because her students generally use the blue calculators, and that calculator has a percent button. Okay, we generally use the graphing calculator, and we do not have that function on our calculator, so we change everything to decimals. Now that we have our periodic rate, we can multiply. Let me move my paper up a little. Get my calculator on the screen. Okay, so we're going to take our balance, $213.57, times our rate of 0.0125, and then it's for 1 month, so we just multiply by 1. So we get $2, and remember to round to the nearest penny, so that becomes a 7. $2.67. Number 2, or B, we have $89.22 subject to an APR of 18%, calculated daily. This is a daily periodic rate. So when we see the word daily, we need to think divide by 365 here. Okay, so let's get our calculator up. 18% divided by 365. It gives you this big long decimal, but remember we're going to the 10,000s place, which is 4 places to the right. Okay, so we're going 0.0493. Remember, this is a percent. I need to add 2 zeros in here. Okay, that's all I'm doing is I'm moving this 2 places to the left now. So I'll write this decimal as 0.000493. That's what we're going to be multiplying by. If I would hit divide by 100, my calculator is going to put this in scientific notation. That's the problem with some of these really small numbers. Our calculator is set to make them scientific notation. So just know that you can add those 2 zeros in there. Okay, let's calculate $89.22 times 0.00493 times the number of days or terms, 30 days. Oops, I missed a 0. 89. I did that before when I practiced this. 493. There we go. $1.32. Remember to round. All right. If you want to try C, hit pause, and then you can try this one on your own. All right, let's check your work. So we have a 12% APR. The period is monthly, the periodic rate. So we divide by 12, and that gives us 1%. 12 divided by 12 is 1. We divide that by 100 to get our decimal, 0.01. So we're going to take 866 and 73 cents. Excuse me, my phone is ringing. I want to swipe it. Sorry about that. Times 0.01, and it's 1 month, so we just multiply by 1. So we get $8.67. Make sure you're rounding correctly. All right, the next one we have letter D, $2,479.01. We have an APR rate of 21%. Periodic rate is daily, so we're going to divide that by 365. Let's get our decimal that we're going to use. 21 divided by 365 gives us this big long decimal. We're going to cut it off at the 10,000. So we're going to go 4 places to the right here. We would add our 2 zeros as well. So it's going to be 0.000575. Now let's use that. 24.79 and 1 penny times our decimal times our number of terms, 31 days. And we get $44.19. Okay, a couple more of these. Letter E, we have $500. The APR is 9%. Periodic rate is monthly. So I'm going to divide that by 12 to get our decimal. 9 divided by 12, that's our percent. Now remember, we're adding our 2 zeros by dividing by 100. So it's 0.0075. Now we can calculate with it. 500 times 0.0075, and it's 1 month, so I just multiply by 1. $3.75. Okay, last one. We have $8,233.86 as a balance. It's an annual percentage rate of 10%. Periodic rate is daily, so I need to divide that by 365. So 10 divided by 365 is going to give us this wacky decimal again. Okay, now we need to round this. So it's going to be 0.0274, and then I'm going to add those 2 zeros in here. So my decimal is going to be 0.000274. Remember, this 3 rounds up to a 4. Okay, let's calculate now. 8233.86 times our wacky decimal, and it's 30 days. So we get $67.68. And our chart is completed. Okay, let's look at number 2. The October credit card statement for Gennaro Rios had a previous balance of $175.30, new purchases and fees $108.85, and payments and credits of $125. The card's annual percentage rate is 21%, and the previous balance method is used with a monthly periodic rate. What is Gennaro's finance charge for October and new balance? Okay, so we have to go through and look at what we're given. This is our previous balance. I'm going to label that with the PB for previous balance. New purchases and fees, well, I know I'm always going to add those, and I'm going to put a plus sign there. Payments and credits, that's going to be a subtraction. The annual percentage rate is 21%. And I'm going to use a previous balance method, and it's monthly periodic rate. So I need to think 12 here. All right, so I'm going to remind myself by putting a 12 there. We're going to calculate the finance charge and the new balance using previous balance method. So when I do this, the first thing I need to do is calculate my periodic rate that I'm going to use. The problem is 21%, and I'm going to divide that by, since I'm using a monthly periodic rate, I need to divide that by 12. That's going to give me 1.75%, and then I want to change that to a decimal. When I do that, I get 0.0175 because I'm moving this decimal 2 places to the left, okay? Now I can calculate my finance charge. I do my finance charge based on the previous balance, all right? So I start with my previous balance. Remember, I labeled that PB. Then I'm going to multiply by our periodic rate, which is this number right here. And then I'm going to multiply by the number of terms. So let's fill in these values. So my finance charge is going to equal now 175.30 times my rate of 0.0175 times 1, because it's just 1 month. So my finance charge here, when I type that all in my calculator, and you can check it, $3.07. Okay, so that's my finance charge. That's only half of what this question asks for. Now I have to calculate my new balance. So my new balance, I'm going to mark as NB, is going to be my previous balance plus my finance charge, plus my new purchases, which we'll label NP, plus my fees, and subtract payments and credits, which we'll label P/C. And now we're simply filling in. New balance equals previous balance, 175.30, plus the finance charge that we just found, $3.07, plus new purchases and fees. They put them together here, 108.85. And then we subtract any payments or credits. Payments and credits in this problem is 125. So my new balance equals, I type all this in and I get, are you checking? 162.22. Let's try another previous balance method problem, but this time instead of monthly, it's going to be daily periodic rate. All right, Tony Bando's credit card has an APR of 18% figured on the previous balance. The previous balance on Tony's credit card statement for July was $308.88. During July, she had new purchases and fees of $276.49 and payment and credits of $400. If the company uses a daily periodic rate for 31 days, what is her finance charge for July and her new balance? Well, let's go through and highlight some important information. 18% figured on previous balance method. Here's our previous balance. I'm going to label it as that. She had new purchases. We'll label that NP with a plus, and payments credits of 400. Daily periodic rate, 31 days. All right, so let's figure out our periodic rate. 18% divided by 365 days because it says daily. So that gives us that wacky decimal. We had one above like this, 0.493%. And then I'm going to add my 2 extra zeros in there to get my decimal that I'm going to use. Now, let's calculate our finance charge. And I'm writing these out every time so you can practice what we're doing. Previous balance times the periodic rate as a decimal times the number of terms or days. Previous balance was 308.88 times 0.000493, and it says 31 days right here, so 31. So our finance charge, when I do that calculation, and if you do it correctly, you should get $4.72. Okay, now I need to calculate the new balance. And remember, new balance is previous balance plus the finance charge plus new purchases, fees get added, and then payments and credits get subtracted. So let's substitute in. New balance equals previous balance, 308.88, plus the $4.72 finance charge. New purchases get added and fees, they're together, $276.49, and payments and credits come off, they are deductions. So the new balance, once I type all this in my calculator, is going to give me $190.09. Okay, we are going to skip number 4, and we're going to go to number 5. Okay, number 5. A credit card company uses an APR of 15% and the adjusted balance method of computing finance charges using a monthly periodic rate. A credit card statement from the company lists the following: previous balance, $601.87. Purchases, $209.88. Fees, $75. Payments, $400. Credits, $25. What was the finance charge for the month and the new balance? Let's go through and underline important information. Here's our annual percentage rate. This time we're using the second method, adjusted balance method. And we're using a monthly periodic rate. So I need to think 12 here. Credit card statement listed the following: previous balance, purchases, that gets NP, fees get added, payments get deducted, and credits get deducted. Okay, what was the finance charge for the month and the new balance? Now, since I'm doing adjusted balance method, I have to find my adjusted balance first. That's what I'm going to use to do my finance charge. So I'm going to write out the steps here for adjusted balance. I'm going to take my previous balance and subtract any payments or credits first. Okay, I'm going to take those off before I do my finance charge calculation. So let's figure out the adjusted balance here. Previous balance, $601.87. And then I had a $400 payment and a $25 credit. So I'm going to subtract those. And that's going to give me my adjusted balance. So my adjusted balance, when I take these off, I'm going to end up with $176.87. Now I can do my finance charge. Remember, my finance charge is now the adjusted balance times the periodic rate as a decimal times the number of terms. So I have to do a little bit of work first. Let's go back to the APR. 15%. It is a monthly periodic rate, so I have to divide by 12. So that gives me 1.25%. And now let's change that to a decimal, 0.0125. Okay, now I'm ready to compute and find my finance charge. Adjusted balance first, 176.87 times the 0.0125. And the number of terms is a 1 because it's 1 month. It doesn't say 30 days or anything like that. It's just 1 month. Finance charge equals, when I do this in my calculator, I get $2.21. Okay, now I'm going to calculate my new balance. And new balance here, I begin with my adjusted balance. I add my finance charge. I add my new purchases and fees. Notice what's missing in my new balance. The credits and payments, because I've already used that value. I took it off already, okay? So let's sub in. My adjusted balance is $176.87 plus my finance charge, $2.21, plus my new purchases, which I got to go back to the scenario, $209.88, and any fees, $75. Remember, we already used these values. We can't use them again. So my new balance, when I do this addition in my calculator, should be $463.96. Okay, we'll do one last problem. It's another adjusted balance method problem, but instead of monthly periodic rate, we're going to use, oh no, we're still going to use monthly. Yeah, we're still going to use monthly. It's just another example, just like 5. June Cristo has a credit card statement that shows a previous balance of $598.61, new purchases and fees of $127.88, and a payment and credit of $250. Her credit card company charges an APR of 12% using a monthly periodic rate on the adjusted balance. What is June's finance charge and new balance? So the first thing we need to know is they're using an adjusted balance method. Let's go through and highlight important information. Previous balance, new purchases, that's going to get added, new purchases. Payment and credits, going to get deducted. APR, 12% monthly, so I'm going to be dividing by 12. All right, one step at a time. Let's do the adjusted balance first because I can't calculate the finance charge without this adjusted balance. Previous balance minus payments and credits. That's how I get that. Adjusted balance here, $598. We're just substituting these in. Subtract payments and credits, $250. So our adjusted balance in this problem is $348.61. Can do my finance charge, but before I do my finance charge, I need to figure out my periodic rate. So we go back to our APR. It says 12% monthly, so I divide that by 12. That gives me 1%. Change that to a decimal. 0.01. Now I'm ready to compute my finance charge. $348.61 times 0.01 times 1 because it's 1 month. Finance charge equals, when I do this in my calculator, I get $3.49. You're noticing something about these values. They're not very big amounts of money. They're relatively small. None of these have been over $10. Now in the chart for number one, there was some that was quite larger because the balances were, thousands of dollars. But when you're talking about balances that are less than $1,000, your finance charge should be relatively small. That's a hint for these warm-ups coming up. Okay, now that we have our finance charge, we can calculate our new balance. And remember, we take our adjusted balance, we add our finance charge, we add new purchases, and we add fees. We've already used the credits and payments. Let's substitute in these values. Adjusted balance, $348.61, plus our finance charge, $349. New purchases, $127.88. And I think that's it. There was no other, the fees were included. So our new balance when I calculate this, should be $479.98. And I know this is a very difficult concept and skill set to learn. It's very involved, lots of steps, lots of processes. But if you practice writing these things down and refer to the notes packet that you took notes on, it will be very helpful. Okay, and you have to read carefully. You have to understand if they're asking you for adjusted balance method or the previous balance method. Okay, so make sure you have these completed for me and try the warm-ups this week. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. Have a great day.